And it's really important if we're growing and changing to have compassion for that person because we're the one that's changing. We're the one that's changing the rules, and it's going to take some time if we're going to stay together for us both to begin to get on that same page again.
Welcome to Give a Heck. I am your host, Dwight Heck, and for much of my life, lived my life in quiet desperation, wondering how I was going to pay the bills, take vacations, save for retirement, and one day wondering if I would get off the hamster wheel of life and have purpose. A life that most of society lives, which takes us to work, then home, then repeat, and pays us hopefully enough just to survive. The harsh truth that most live with more month than money and have no idea how to live life on purpose, not by accident. This ensures the mass majority are living not just financially broke, however emotionally and mentally as well due to financial pressures. In each episode, I will introduce you to thoughts, ideas, and guests that can help you to learn how you too can live life on purpose, not by accident.
Good day, and welcome to Give a Heck. On today's show, I welcome Arlene Miller. Arlene is the CEO of Jewel Consultancy and is a work-life balance and harmony coach who brings a wealth of training and experience to help women compassionately and wholeheartedly lead themselves and create the life they desire, a life that works and feels right to them. In addition to coaching, Arlene also offers transformational healing and heart alchemy mentoring to help men and women heal themselves from the inside out, learning how to fill themselves with the unconditional love that they need to let go of fears and judgments that have been holding them back and keeping them small. I'd like to welcome you to the show, Arlene. Thanks so much for agreeing to come on and share with us some of your life journey.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, you're welcome, and thank you for being willing to invest some of your time and listeners and viewers of Give a Heck. As we talked about before I hit record, my whole purpose of this podcast is to enlighten and help people showcase their talents and their skills, and for my listeners to be able to tap into that, because again, a lot of times people are stuck on a hamster wheel of life and they really don't know where they're going. So again, thank you so much for investing your time. One of the things I focus on, Arlene, and have since episode 1 is a person's origin story, because I feel it is very important for people to know, like, and trust you. And it can happen in a very short period of time just by people being able to relate to what your childhood was like, what it was like through, your adolescent years into teenage, into being an adult to where you're at currently. So if you could please share your origin story, whatever you feel comfortable with, I'd really appreciate it.
Well, I'm the oldest of three. I have a brother that's 2 years younger than me and a brother that's 12 years younger than me, and he's in Singapore, and I get to go visit him shortly. I haven't seen him in 9 years in person. I'm excited. Mother, father. My was an entrepreneur. His father and their brothers started a string of movie theaters in Louisville, Kentucky, where I grew up. And my father worked for them for a while, then decided to go out in business for himself. And I loved what he did. He had a business called Standard Vendors that sold popcorn and cotton candy and all the sweets and the machines that with them to movie theaters and schools. And as a kid, I thought that was awesome. My mother was a stay-at-home mom. Both of her parents worked and they didn't have much money. And so she sort of felt like, she made it when she got to stay home and take care of us. But she also volunteered as we got older. She was a social worker and she worked for like a call-in center for people that, I don't know, were suicidal or whatever was going on for them. And so she also did that. So that was my childhood. Pretty normal childhood, raised by pretty traditional parents. My father thought I was not going to be a career person. That never crossed his mind. But he was happy to help me with my education. And, when I let him know in no uncertain terms that I was actually going to practice law, that I wasn't going through 3 years of that and 4 years of university just to stay at home, he got over it and he always supported me. So, yeah, I had a really kind of normal childhood in middle-class America in Louisville, Kentucky. And I went to college and I went to law school and I had two law firms. one just a solo practitioner law firm in a suburb of Cleveland, Ohio. Opened that when I was 29. Immediately found out I was pregnant. And my ex-husband was a resident at the Cleveland Clinic and worked, I don't know, 80 hours a week. So I didn't have any support from him. Our families were, down the road in Kentucky. We were up in by Lake Erie in Ohio. And so I didn't have any help. So I had to really develop and put together a tribe, a team to help me raise my son and start a business and get it off and running. And when I didn't know what the heck I was doing. Um, yeah, so I did that. And then when my son was 9, I sold the business to a larger firm and I moved to a suburb of Denver, bought into a small boutique law firm. I first started off doing family law, so I represented both men and women in divorce. I was also appointed by the court to represent kids in contested child custody cases when there was alcoholism or drugs or some sort of maybe abuse in some way. And I got really burned out. I started that when I was like 27. Didn't really have the skills and tools to deal with all of that. It was pretty intense. And I ended up transferring to a new area of law that felt more right for me and be able to still have I don't know, the wherewithal to take care of my son and have megabytes left for that at the end of the day and during the day. And so I became a commercial lawyer and I helped businesses collect their debts, which was pretty fun. And so I moved and became a partner in a small boutique firm in Longmont, Colorado, which is a suburb of Denver. We sold that a few years ago. And while I was there, I also got a diploma in transformational holistic counseling, a diploma in coaching and mentoring, which I did use in my law firm. So I could be a better communicator, a better negotiator, better mom, a better partner. Just, a lot of it was a really humbling experience because I found out I really needed to pick up my game when it came to listening to other people and actually hearing what they were saying instead of thinking what I was going to say back to them when they were talking, which really wasn't very helpful. And I don't know, we were active like in the Commercial Law League of America. So I've been like chair of a whole bunch of different national committees and leadership positions and stuff like that, which was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that. Really good experience. And we sold the business so I could really focus on, what felt the next step for me, which was coaching and mentoring more on a full-time basis. So
Wow.
that's the short version.
That's great. That's a great breakdown of your origin. I think the thing that I liked the most was the fact of learning to communicate better and learning to understand because so many of us today don't listen to what people say. We're always waiting to respond. And it is truly a skill. It's not something that you just wake up with one day and develop, right? It's something that
Yeah.
I've had to work on. I think one of the biggest things that happened when I started this podcast back in 2020 was it taught me to be a better listener and still understand how to formulate a thought to respond once that person was done communicating. So it was a balancing act between my thoughts and being a critical thinker so that I was not just going, hurry up and quit talking, Arlene, so I can talk, right? You know what I mean? Like so many people are like that. It's just like you can see it in their face and their body language. They're just like waiting for you to be quiet so they can share their infinite wisdom or whatever the case they think they have, right? And yeah, so I love that part that you integrated that within your law practice too, because I've dealt with many lawyers in my life in regards to business, family, going through my own divorce, and they're terrible at listening, most of them. Like they're always thinking about, I don't even know if they're thinking about me, if they're thinking about another case, right? Because their eyes are kind of glossed over. So I think that was one of the things that I triggered on the most in a positive way is that you worked at becoming a better person by learning listening skills. So those watching or listening to this show, it is a skill that you can learn, right? To be able to be a
Yeah,
better listener and just not respond and really don't know what that person even said. Because really, at the end of
right.
the day, to create a great relationship requires great listening skills.
Yeah, and if I could say something about attorneys,
Sure.
because I mean, after I left all that stuff with family law and became more, it was a less intense practice of law with helping businesses collect their debts. Family law is really intense. And I subsequently learned, like starting when my son was 3 because of his ADHD, and I was trying to help him, a lot of different healing modalities, learned how to energetically protect myself as well as, on the physical ground. And I didn't have those skills. And if you don't have those skills in family law, you can be like a puddle on the floor if you're sensitive, intuitive, and empathic any way, shape, or form, because people are coming to you at their worst. And a lot of the women and a lot of the attorneys, a lot of the women, full stop, that really were successful in family law, they had a huge shell around them. That was the only way that they could survive, because it's intense dealing with the opposing counsel. It's intense dealing with your client. The judicial system is kind of a mess when it comes to things, especially with division of property, when people are hiding assets or people are manipulating their children. And it's a pretty toxic environment. And if you don't have the tools and skills, I mean, I'm sure they all have the tools and skills to be an attorney in that area of practice. But if you don't have the tools and skills personally to cleanse and clear yourself of all that negative and imbalanced energy and all that toxicity and all those expectations that people are projecting at you, it's hard. And I'm not making excuses for the attorneys. I'm just saying what it was like on my end being a family law attorney.
Well, eventually, it's not just in being a lawyer, it's in lots of professions. Even in my profession, eventually you become tone deaf or deaf to the circumstances that you've helped people with for years to protect yourself, and then you become emotionally dead, I guess, is a way of looking at it. I've seen it with accountants, even. I've seen it with people in my industry. I've seen it with doctors, even. My own doctor finally retired this year. He's just about to hit 70 and knew him for 37 years. And I've seen the evolution of him even, and his compassion level in conversations just wasn't there the last 5, 6 years. He was, and even prior to that, I could see him emotionally shutting down, right? He just listen, give you whatever prescription or tell you what you needed to do, and he walk out of the room, where before he used to be really in depth in conversation in that relationship. So yeah, I would never pick on, obviously lawyers know what they're doing. They wouldn't have become a lawyer, but I can see, especially in family law, as you mentioned, I can obviously understand what you're saying. If you're not a person, especially if you're a person that's an empath, because I am, I've had to learn to control the fact that I pick up on everybody. I'm a giant antenna, so I couldn't imagine a family lawyer being an empath and what they go through.
Yeah. So I wasn't like defending it. I just wanted to give you sort of the other side of it. I know that this happens in a lot of professions across the board, and there's got to be a better way. A lot of people, we're just not, a lot of caring people just aren't trained how to handle things, or they're in kind of jobs where they put you in a corner and make it difficult to be compassionate and have the time.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
so yeah, I just felt I would throw that in. It wasn't
No,
anything to
no,
do
no,
with
no. I didn't
anything. It
take
just
I didn't take it anyway, except that it was an opening to let people know it happens in so many more professions than
Yeah,
just being a lawyer. So yeah, no, I know you weren't defending it, and I'm sure the listeners do too. Just making sure they understand that it happens in all fields, that
it
this isn't
does.
picking on any one industry. And really at the end of the day, I think our schooling system through university and colleges needs to, they spend so much time on the facts of this is how you do whatever you need to do. This is how you treat it. This is how you deal with it. Here's a case study. This is what the result was. How would you have dealt with it? Whatever. But there's not enough focus on relationships, on how to deal with those tense situations, or what you mentioned, get backed into a corner. How do you deal with your emotional state? And then sadly, that comes back to going into a person's home. And it goes back to what you talked about, difficult clients you dealt with in regards to addictions, right? Having alcoholism or drugs or whatever. Some of that started because of their job and not being able to deal with the tumultuous situations that they face. and then they bring it home, or they try to mask it with other things, which leads to divorce, which leads to, abuse. It's all a very fine line, but it all connects in some way, at least I feel.
Yeah, and I feel that one of the big missing pieces is that kids just need, and I need it, just to get out in nature, to play, to experience, and to get out of the classroom and to get away from all those grades and tests and have life experiences on the ground instead of sitting at a desk and taking tests and all that, where they can really learn in a more flowy kind of way. And yeah, so
Well,
that's just my 2 cents on that.
well, I know, and I appreciate your 2 cents on that, because really, at the end of the day, they sit them down and they spend a lot of time. Like, I look at my grandkids, a couple of them have to have Chromebooks, and they do all their stuff now as and started as young as my one grandson's in grade 7. It started in grade 4 already. I had to get him well, I didn't have to, but I helped out my daughter get him a Chromebook, and they do stuff during the day on in class, just staring at a screen. And then my point of this is, then he comes home and he's got his face in front of Nintendo Switch, I think they call them, and then they have, you know what I mean? They're going from one avenue of staring at a screen to coming home and staring at another screen when they need to spend more time outside. And she's
Yeah.
realized that big time, and has them, they have to be in one activity after school, right? Or on the weekends, they have to be physically active. She will kick them outside to play with the basketball net that I gave them, or she'll kick them outside to go on bike rides and spend time outside in nature and not constantly be stuck in front of a digital screen. And unfortunately, I've seen with my practice and all the clients I have that parents parent their children with a screen in front of them at the dining room table for what seemed, for dinner, whatever people call it. I call it supper. And they've got a tablet in front of them, and the parents are on a phone, the kids are watching a TV show, they're eating, but there's no communication. You go to a restaurant, you see it happening where there's a group of tables and people aren't talking, they're all in their smart devices. It's just, and I'm not saying that there's not some pros to a smart device. I'm saying there's a lot of negatives. It's lost us that interconnection, that relationship building. Even I've had meetings with people where they're constantly checking their phone, and it's frustrating, right? Because their time and my time should be our time. It shouldn't be them constantly checking their phone unless they tell me there's an emergency going on and something might come up that they'll deal with. And I can respect that. But I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I think
It's addictive.
it is.
It's addictive. So yeah, that's the way it is. And what we can do is lead by example and do things a different way.
Oh, absolutely. I do, especially when my kids and grandkids are over. I still have that. No, sorry, you can't do that. Well, I get to do this at such and such. That's okay. You're at grandpa's house. You're at papa's house. You can't do that. Right? When you leave, you can do whatever you want. I can't control you when you leave this house. But when you're here, Papa wants to know about how your day was and what's going on in this sport, and tell me about your friends. And we can do that all while we're still eating and have a conversation, right? And it just, I find it that I like that connection, and I don't like seeing that digital device. Again, you're right. It is completely addictive. And as parents, and grandparents, we need to set the example and make sure we stay focused on what's real and what's true, because we have no promise of tomorrow. Life's in session. This is not a dress rehearsal, right? So make it
Right.
about people, not about technology. So one of the things we touched a little bit about it before I hit the record button, is, you focus on helping women create their ideal life. And I applaud that, as I mentioned earlier, because as long as I can recall, women have taken a back seat to men and their careers and the life they truly desire, because they're always, oh, what can I do for my husband, my boyfriend, my significant other, my children? And they get lost. And I see that a lot, especially with my clients now that their kids are all growing up, and the wife raised them at home. The stay-at-home moms, they feel even more like they're on a hamster wheel, or they're just confused as to what they want because they've never really focused on themselves. And today I see in the world that there's been so many causes that are highlighted again, this isn't personal to anything, but to Black Lives Matter, Indigenous rights. And again, I'm not saying they don't deserve their attention, but I, as a dad, as what my kids would call a feminist, really want to ensure that my four daughters of my five kids understand and have understood since they were little that they are equal to me, right? We have our strengths and weaknesses, obviously, but we're equal. And told them to always reach for the stars, to always, that they could have whatever they desired, and obviously did whatever I could through their education, as you mentioned, with your father supporting you with your education, for supporting them for whatever endeavor they wanted, so that they could be the ultimate version of their self. When you reach and talk to women that are going through this, how do you approach helping them become unstuck?
Well, that's a very big question because I feel it's an individual thing, because we have to, there's no such thing, in my opinion, my humble opinion, of getting to a place where we have found work-life balance and harmony. It's always evolving. We're always changing. We're always dealing with a lot of things. So it's about letting go of the need to be perfect. A lot of women I find run this perfection thing. So if we're not perfect, we don't do everything great, and we made a mistake, God forbid, we're going to beat ourselves up and berate ourselves and tell us all the things that we did wrong instead of lifting ourselves up and acknowledging the things that we do every day and celebrating those successes. And so it's I work with women on many different levels. That's a huge question. But one way is to really help them to begin to notice, how am I talking to myself? What is that voice in my ear? Is that the way I would talk to my best friend or someone that I dearly loved? Or am I talking in a very different way to myself because I have expectations and standards that I'm creating for myself that I cannot possibly ever reach? Because that's what I was doing to myself when I was younger, and I was miserable. And I didn't even realize those voices in my ears and how it was all working. So I really help as a starting point to become aware of what we're doing and how we're talking to ourselves, to become aware of what we would truly like to create for ourselves in the ideal, so that we are beginning to focus on, at least on a visualization feeling level, of where I'd like to be maybe in a year or 5 years from my life, what's really important to me, what I would like to create. Because what we focus on is what we get more of in our lives. And to really notice where we're judging ourselves and tearing ourselves down, so that we can face that stuff, and it begin to wither away when we actually put attention on it. And then we can play with ways to, step more into that inner coach and the person that we would truly like to be, because it does take practice, 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 and practice makes permanent to create these kind of changes in our lives. So it really depends on what they're bringing to me, where they'd like to be from where they are now. And that's where the beginning focus can be, because, work-life balance and harmony can be a whole bunch of things, many things to different people. So I don't assume anything.
No, that's awesome. I like what you said. Practice makes permanent. Most people say practice makes perfect, but really, is there perfection, right? So I like
No.
that. I like that statement. Practice makes it right. I like that. That is a nice. People that are listening or watching, I would trigger on that, because practice doesn't make perfect, right? It's just a matter of practice can make it permanent, can make it. It can make it so that you're on a great trajectory in your life. And I agree, evolving work-life balance, it's tricky. I don't think it exists where you can have perfect work-life balance. I tell people that all you can do is achieve and focus on what your core values are. If your core values focus on work-life balance, well, that's great. Now, what are you going to do? What actions are you going to take? And let's put it down on paper, like you talked about. Let's document, what do you want out of the next 1 to 5 years, and then put things in place. And it's practice, practice, practice. I love what you had to say. Thanks so much for that. Um, One of the things I also wanted to talk about, though, is when we do talk about, we did mention today's women that are in a full-time job or career. I still see it, and I have a fairly large practice where husband and wife man and woman, significant others, whether they're married or not, one's always taking on more burden. One comes home at the end of the day and they're still focusing on making a meal for the family, or they're doing laundry, they're doing this and that. And by 10 o'clock at night, they're lucky if they get any time for themselves. And there is no work-life balance. Is there a process? So through your process, would you help women discover how to, delegate to their significant other, or work to be able to have it so that they get the much deserved work-life balance so they can have a life as well?
If they wanted me to, of course I would. And also what I find is that, even if you have a women like that, we tend to make priority lists for one day that can be for a whole week. So there's no way we're going to ever get through all of that. So we're setting ourselves up for failure. So, how can we streamline things with what we have? What really needs to get done today? And um, I love that Brian Tracy book called Eat That Frog. And it talks about eating the biggest, hairiest frog at the beginning of the day, which means whatever you absolutely have to get done, you make sure that that's done. That takes a tremendous stress load off of you. And everything else is icing on the cake. Because otherwise, if you do 50,000 other things, that one frog is always going to be in the background, pulling on you and pulling you down because you have to get that done. And, as a recovering perfectionist and one that always had to-do lists that were way, way too long that caused anxiety and stress, there's so many things that we put on it that we don't have to do today. So it if the partner's not coming to me too, all I can do is to help the client, the woman, of how to maybe communicate and work things out with their partner. I can't really control that. If they want to have some suggestions and I'm mentoring them, of course I can give them. That's always a possibility. The thing that I guess women have to remember when we're doing that, and this is not to shut it down, is that when we come together in a relationship and we brought ourselves a certain way, it's like, these are my make me happy things that this person does for me, and these are the make me happy things I do for this person, and they become expectations. And so if we change and grow and we're going to do things differently, all of a sudden we're not ticking their make me happy box anymore. And while we can feel really great about changing and evolving and growing, the other person might have some reactions to it. And it's really important, if we're growing and changing, to have compassion for that person, because we're the one that's changing. We're the one that's changing the rules, and it's going to take some time if we're going to stay together for us both to begin to get on that same page again, where we both sort of have an agreement, like with the responsibilities at home of who does what. I don't know if that makes sense or not,
Oh,
but
it
it's
does.
important to have compassion for your partner if you are the one that's changing.
Well, I was thinking as you were mentioning that, what popped into my head is a very famous book that I've gone through multiple times, is The Five Love Languages. That one person in their relationship could be feeding the love language of the other partner and not worrying about themselves. And now that they try to evolve and change, they're not feeding that person everything that they require. They're feeding themselves what they need to sustain themselves, and obviously there can be some conflict. Um, I've had many individuals have conversations around their love languages and discovering what their communication style is and what they need to survive. And you're right, a long-term healthy relationship, for it to survive, both people need to feel fulfilled. I don't think it can be equal. It's really difficult. I know people would love to think that it's equal. I don't know if you think that's possible, but I think that sometimes there's always going to be the actual scale is going to lean one way more than the other because of circumstances of who they are
Yeah,
as individuals. But I believe you can come to a happy place, and communication is big, still,
yeah,
still big.
yeah. When people love each other and they want to communicate, it can take some time, but things can be worked out. And you're right, it's not a one size fit all, and circumstances change. Maybe one person needs surgery, or break their leg, or a child needs more attention than another child. All kinds of things happen, and that's why it's really important to be flexible and adaptable.
Is it possible, do you believe, just thinking this out loud, for a person to be taught empathy so that the person that breaks their leg, for an example, their significant other, maybe they weren't a person that necessarily would, oh, that's too bad. They're more closed off. Is this something that you believe a person can learn? Because I know myself, I've been coached. I've had different things done to, people on my podcast in regards to empathy, and they have their different opinions. I myself don't know if a person can really learn how to be empathetic. I think it's something that you have to have in your core, which can be nurtured and watered. But I don't think everybody can be empathetic. What is your thoughts on that?
I don't know if I've ever put it in like yes or no like that before, but I do feel very strongly that it does help a lot if we're raised in a nurturing environment where we feel loved. The more judgment you have in your environment, maybe the more difficult it is to develop that empathy. But I also feel like, because I feel like I developed it more as an adult, where I had some, and I do still have some amazing mentors. If I'm going to be mentoring other people, I want to be mentored as well, so I can continue to evolve and grow and not get stagnant. And so I believe that, no matter where we are, if someone's leading by example, and they're maybe holding a space of unconditional love for me no matter who I am or what I do. They don't like my behavior, I might hear about it, but the love is always there. um I believe it's possible. I believe it's possible because I feel like I started off life and that was really comfortable in the law because it was very intellectual, and it's taken years to really develop the other side of my brain where I always had it, but to be that more creative, loving, flowing kind of person, and I'm still a work in progress. And, some people will say, well, you couldn't do that. So I guess I say never.
It's a good way to look at it because at the end of the day, though, I like how you talked about the fact that coaches or people that educate need to still be mentored to continue to grow. We never stop learning till the day we take our last breath. And I look at how I used to be. So to change what I said, yes, you're right. I believe now at this point that people can change and adapt because I didn't realize the seeds that I had in regards to being an empath or being somebody that could be very empathetic. I just was doing it until it was brought to my attention what I was doing, and then started working on that and fine tuning the process to protect myself because sometimes it would be a fact that I'd take on too much and it would affect me and cause anxiety and stress, right? So I like your take on it that you're right, because even yourself, as you mentioned, being that lawyer, and now you look at where you're evolved to today, I think the key is that we do need good people in our lives to help focus and direct us. If somebody watching or listening, there's great podcasts out there too that teach you how to be a better communicator, that teach you how to be more empathetic. There's fantastic books. Start there if you don't want to or are unable to hire somebody to help you. Maybe you have a friend that you've always admired. I've seen that too. I had somebody that I really admired for many years, and I seen how they communicated and dealt with others. And I started having conversations, and I was vulnerable and told them, this is what I've experienced. This is what just happened. And I'd be vulnerable to let them tell me, well, like you said, somebody that has unconditional love and listens to you can make a huge difference in your life. And that person was a mentor of mine that started me on the personal development and growth phase in my life already 31 years ago. So I
Yeah.
appreciate your take on that. So just be open. Whoever's watching,
Yeah.
listening, be open.
And I guess, sometimes like from my point of view, it was really hard just to read a book or to listen to a podcast or have watch a video or whatever if I didn't have a foundation there that I was working with already. And there's all kinds, I mean, we have to be really, really discerning, but there's all kinds of groups or people to coming together. And if you find a group that maybe is interested in personal self-development or work-life balance or whatever is your thing that you want to grow in yourself, maybe try out some groups online or some in your community. Be really discerning if you feel like they're have the energy and the love that you're looking for or not. But I feel it does help to have that personal touch with other people.
I love that. That's so true. Like I've heard that from many people. Even one of my daughters told me this the other day. She's in her 30s. She said, "Dad, I've been thinking about you. Have you checked out Meetup?" And I go, "Well, why?" She says, "Well, I know you were gonna do that a while ago because you were saying, well, things have changed in your life. We're all growing up, and you're looking for people that are like-minded like yourself. Well, why not check out Meetup? And you can go to some of these introductory meetings. Some of them are online, some of them are face to face, and you'll find like-minded people like you so you can continue to grow." And, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm in my late 50s. She's in her 30s. She's wiser than I am. Right? You have
We do
that.
learn from our children.
Oh yeah, you have those aha moments, right? And I was telling her, I said,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, there's lots of times, even my youngest, who's 25, my son, he'll say things to me when he's home because he works out of the city. He's gone for 21 days at a time, and he comes home and he'll say some things, and I'll just look at him and go, "How did you get so wise all of a sudden?" You know what I mean? That's another thing. We have to be open to that, right? We have to be
Yeah,
open to
right.
listening to people. Age has nothing to do with wisdom. It's mistakes turned into life lessons, and life lessons turned into teachable moments. And you can get those from your children. I'm finding that more and more as I age. Even my one grandson, he says different things to me that just makes me stop and pause in a good way. Things that I would just, he sees his glasses are a different shade of rosy, right? So he sees things a little bit different than Papa. And yeah, it's life's good. We just got to be open and receptive to change. And I don't think age has anything. That old dog new trick thing, that phrase is so broken. It's so wrong. I think
Yeah.
we can always evolve.
Well, I will insert something a little bit back to what you were talking about with the meetup. I
Sure.
facilitate classes on Meetup every week. I
Oh,
have
do you?
three Meetup groups. Yeah. They they're called, one's self-mastery, one's like transformational healing and personal spiritual alchemy, and I forget what the third one's called at the moment. I don't know. Anyway, they're all the same thing. They all feed in. One's located in Denver, one's located in Longmont, Colorado, where I used to live before I moved like a year and a half ago, and one's in Perth, Australia, because I have lots of friends there. And
Wow.
so I get people coming to my online classes, from all over the world. Sometimes I get some Canadians, and it's that's why I do it, to bring like-minded souls together who are interested in that kind of personal transformational development stuff that I work with. And I work with having that big, huge, unconditionally loving, judgment-free space for people. And I love it. It's part of my service work. It's not I don't charge anything for it. I just feel it's important.
That's awesome. Things happen for us, not to us. That conversation was meant to happen about it because now you just reaffirmed what my daughter was telling me. So I appreciate that. But it's true. Like everybody's always looking for things to happen to them. Well, they happen for us. It's by opening our minds up to listening or having questions that bring up a topic like meetup and stuff. So I appreciate you sharing that. Those listening, check them out. There you go. You got three different meetup groups. I assume I'm not familiar with how meetup works, but I assume they can just type in your name and find out the different
um,
groups. Is that
If
how it
not,
works?
if not, if not, just text me at 720-936-2634. I'm not sure if it comes up under my name, Arlene Cohen Miller, or not. I have never searched me on Meetup,
Okay.
so I don't know how it works. But if you're interested or something like that goes, wow, that'd be really cool. Just text me, let me know that you want to know about it, and I'll just send you the links.
Right on. I'll make sure that goes into the show notes so that people can check that out because I think that would be fantastic. Just communicating with you now, I can just imagine how much help your meetup groups have done for other people. And obviously, at the end of the day, those that are listening to the show, I facilitate different workshops or I'll do different things to help people on Zoom. And I feel great after the fact. It does as much for them, it does as much for me. Gives me that good feeling, as you mentioned, you don't charge for it, but you just feel that it's important. And sometimes that's just what we need to do is we need to give more than we get back, and we do get back. I find that I get back, even podcasting. I'll get off a great podcast interview and I'll feel the warm and fuzzies. It may sound weird, but I'll feel really good about
No.
myself because it was a great conversation. Then I'll listen back to the show. I usually listen back to my shows just like any good coach listens, watches their game tape. I listen back to my shows and I go over notes and I'll learn even more. And it's just it's a great experience when you can support and help others because it comes back and supports and helps you if you have the right mindset.
Yeah, I find that, as you give, you receive, and as you receive, you give. And the giving is really cool. They're not all like wow moments, but lots of times there's just people that come in and, maybe they don't even completely resonate with what I'm sharing. Maybe it's a little bit, I don't know, just it doesn't quite work for them. But there's something that's said in that conversation that planted a seed for another time. And so I just really, some people will really get it and come back a lot. And some people, I'm just a seed planter. I plant the seed. I don't know when it's going to bloom or blossom, but you can really, like, I agree with you. The feeling of being able to serve in this way is really, really cool. I
Oh,
recommend it.
the gratefulness, the gratitude that I experienced just from yeah, it is. And I love how you say, we never know who we're going to plant the seed. I had this happen recently where somebody reached out to me and said that they had listened to something that I had done. I don't know if it was a podcast. I can't remember if they were on a call. There was somebody I've known for years and said something that I had said years ago. And every time they go to communicate and in regards to a specific type part of their life, they'll think, what would Dwight do? I thought that was
Wow.
kind of,
Oh my God.
I thought that was kind of neat. When they said that to me, I said, "Are you serious?" And they go, "Yeah." She said, I am serious." She says, I think to myself, is that a good decision? What would Dwight do? Should I say that? What would, and I go, well, hopefully it doesn't take over your thoughts. She says, no, just in specific areas of my life. I said, well, you know what? I really appreciate you sharing that. She says, I don't know why. I just felt we were just having a conversation. I felt like I should share that with you. And I said, well, thank you. I said, you just made my week. It was awesome because that was a seed I planted that I didn't realize because I did.
Right.
I've talked about it over the years. Like, think about your mentor, your coach, and it's okay to question your mindset because our brain doesn't know the difference between a truth and a lie. So sometimes we need to have grounding mechanisms to keep the truth that we want to live or that we're trying to live alive. And sometimes I think to myself, what would this mentor of mine do? What would they be thinking? Just to make me think differently because they don't have the opportunity at that moment to reach out to them and ask, and I wouldn't want to bug them all the time. So I just use them as a guiding force for myself. So I thought that was kind of neat that she did that.
I have a different way of doing it. I always ask myself, what would love do now? How may I best serve?
Hmm, I love that.
And I don't always get an answer, but eventually I'll get a feeling, and sometimes it's a good thing because you can sort of feel into what you were thinking of doing, and it's like, that doesn't feel quite right. And I don't really have the words for why it doesn't feel quite right now. But yeah, I find that's a really easy way to do it.
I'm going to steal that. I never ever thought
Good.
about that. What would love do? Because I talk about, excuse me, love all the time. And the power of it and how people don't really understand how powerful it can be. So what would love do? That's even so people listening, that's even more simplistic. You don't have to think about your mentor, just ask yourself what would love do. I like that.
Yeah,
I'm
what
gonna
would love do
practice that
now, right now?
now, right? Okay, I'll change that. I just put what would love do? What would love do now? That is awesome, though. What a great way to ground
Yeah.
ourselves.
Well, I
I
learned that from a mentor of mine. I'm not taking credit for that, but I just love that because it keeps it really simple. And I feel like it's important to keep it simple. We can make things really, really complicated for ourselves and get all involved with these stories we're telling ourselves in our head. If we come back to simplicity and breathe, life can just sort of not be so complicated.
Well, that's true. And speaking about breathing, one of the things I wanted to communicate with you about, and I have so many, I've had people on, and there's different camps on breath work, relaxation, and how effective it can be to help us out, help men and women work on themselves. You specialize working on from the inside out, utilizing breath work and relaxation please explain what your process does in regards to helping people from the inside out is, because normally throughout my life, I've heard it working from the outside in. You're talking about a technique that works from the inside out, and I really like to understand that. So please share what you feel comfortable about that.
Well, a really simple way that I can explain it, there's all kind of life hacks and mom hacks and work hacks out there, and they give you all great ways to organize your life, to simplify, to make sure you have more time for yourself, which is important for all of us. And maybe we do get more time because we have our groceries delivered, and we can make the list online and send it in, and saves us a couple hours. But if we don't work on ourselves on the inside, the patterns and programs that are holding us back, the negative self-talk, the ways we cause ourselves to contract and play small, so that we can begin to let all that stuff go and be more aligned to love and centered in our hearts and really grounded into the planet, we're going to still feel all that stuff we're still feeling. We'll have a little bit more time maybe, unless we waste it on social media, but it won't change who we are on the inside. So that's the beginning premise. And so what I can do is help people to use simple tools and techniques that they can practice themselves to feel more calm, more settled, more grounded, more fully present on the inside. Because if we're fully present here now, we're more likely to be in that place, because we get anxious when we're thinking about the future, all the things we have to do, or we're focused on the past, maybe the good old days or things we feel bad about ourselves. But to really be able to be in that calm, centered spot, we have to be fully present here now. And we do that as podcasters or as guests. We do that as coaches. We even do that, hopefully, if we're being coached or being mentored. So we all have that ability, and it's just about honing the skills of that ability. And so with breath work, I teach people some really simple techniques. I can share one really simple one is like, if you breathe in through your nose and you breathe out through your nose, and your out breath is longer than your in breath, physiologically, you are taking yourself from fight or flight to rest and relax mode. Because what happens when we're all stressed and we're all tense is we're breathing in the top part of our lungs. We're even maybe holding our breath and then breathing a little bit. And that tells our body that something bad is going to happen and we need to wind up, or we need to run, or, it's the old physiology that a bear is chasing me. So we need to physiologically have ways to calm ourselves down. And that's one really simple way. There's quite a few I like. But that's one way that your audience can just take away and practice today. And the thing is, you can do it anywhere. You can do it in your car while you're driving. You can do it at the checkout line at the grocery store. You have a friend that won't shut up and going blah, 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 blah. You can practice your breath work. And it doesn't happen immediately. It's not like little magic fairy dust that comes down there. You just breathe like this until you begin to calm down. And what you can do with that as well is you can feel like there's roots of light from your heart, your high heart, your heart chakra, down your body, down your legs, out your feet. It's like you're a tree, and it's anchoring to the heart of the planet. So it's like your heart is connecting to my heart. And it's like when you go out in nature, how you feel different, how healing it is. That energy of Mother Nature, you're grounding and connecting with that. And so those are two things that you can immediately do, all the audiences listening here, to calm down and to be more fully present here now. I mean, there's lots of others, but I just wanted to give you something to begin with.
That's awesome. I appreciate that. And hopefully the listeners and viewers try it out. I've been practicing breath work, and I started utilizing actually my smartwatch. My Apple Watch has a feature where it actually reminds you to breathe. And when you tap on it, it actually has haptic feedback, and it gets you to do, like you're saying, take a deep breath in, but the release of it is longer than the intake, right? Similar to what you're saying. And yeah, I happen to think breath work works. And I like how you put it, though. Sometimes we're taking in a breath, but we're not releasing our cycle of breathing. And it does put me in a more tense situation. My shoulders are up more, my chest is tight. But I've also learned over the years through self-work on myself, my triggers too. I understand the triggers of certain things. Am I always aware of them? Sometimes I ignore them. I'm human. All right. I'd be lying if I said that I'm perfect, because I don't think anybody's perfect. We just have to keep on moving along. So I appreciate you sharing that about the breathing.
And one thing we can do is when we make a mistake, like you're talking about, you realize maybe you gotten all anxious and like, wow, I was holding my breath and I had this trigger that happened. I didn't recognize it. I like to use positive self-talk, like, that's not like me, because we're not our feelings, we're not our thoughts, we're not our actions. We're a soul having an experience in the physical body. Who we are. And so that's not like me. I'll do better next time. And then what we can do is we can stop either then or at another time, maybe before bed, and visualize and feel if I had a similar situation, the same kind of situation come up again, how could I be different? What could I do different? How would I behave different? What would it feel like? What would it look like? And so we have this visualization feeling experience, and that becomes like the foundation for the new, so that we don't keep on repeating the same thing over and over again, because we all have triggers.
Oh,
Nobody doesn't have a trigger. If they are, they're just avoiding and denying them all. So yes,
and one thing I will add too, though, is you mentioned like when we do notice that we've had something go on or and we use that, that's not like me. Um, Forgive yourself. Don't be so hard on yourself. So I find today in society, people beat themselves up so bad. And then all they do is their mind is caught on that. And it affects not just them, it affects those around them, their surroundings around them,
right.
which could be their children, their coworkers, it could be their clients or whatever the case may be. I had to work hard on forgiving myself for those
Yeah.
circumstances where I realized, because I used to say to myself, well, I know better. Why did I allow that to happen? Like, and I beat myself up. Now it's just like, oh well, okay. What can I learn from this? And I find a lot of it has
Right.
to do I practice gratitude a couple times a day. I know you talk about gratitude in your practice. It's so important for me to have the realization, and especially when I'm laying in bed at night, when I say prayers and then I go through a great gratitude exercise where I analyze the good, bad, and ugly of my day and realize, oh, I had this happen. This person responded this way, or this person did that, or I responded this way. Why did I do that? What can I do better tomorrow? Instead of beating myself up, because then when I beat myself up, I go to bed, my brain keeps on working on that, and then I have bad dreams or I have a restless sleep. And I don't know if you can
Yeah.
relate to that.
I sleep really good, but I guess what I could add some stuff to that. One of the ways
Sure.
I like to work with it is that, if I'm triggered by something, because, two people, let's say there's three of us together and one person says something, I have a reaction, the person next to me doesn't, because there's a trigger inside of me that was set off. It's something in me that's not healed. And so what I do is I don't always, but what one thing that I think is really helpful is I step back and go, okay, how old is this bit inside of me? Is she 8? Is she 16? Is she 14? And I really feel into it. And lots of times what I've found is that there's these bits of me that had behavior problems in a moment, or a traumatic moment for me because I was so empathic and sensitive when I was growing up, that I didn't like her behavior, I didn't like something she did, and I just pushed her away. I wasn't there for her, I didn't parent her, she didn't grow up. And I turn around and I am the big mama, and I am the adult now, I am the soul, and I love her. I put my arms around them. Sometimes the teenagers take a while, they can be pretty upset with me, and that's okay, as teenagers can be, but that seems to be really, really helpful as well, because we have then that those bits inside of ourselves can feel loved and supported, and it's like not a one-off thing, and they can begin to feel okay to come back into my heart and to let go of whatever patterning and programming that I took on at that time. It's a process, it takes practice, but especially we all know how to do it for other people, how to love them. So of course we know how to turn around and love the kids in us that are part of these triggers and these behaviors.
Yeah, I love that though. How old is this bit inside of me? What a great process to help heal our inner self, right? To
Yeah,
go from the inside and accept it and realize, where did that come from? I believe it could probably open up a lot of other doors too, to things that we've compartmentalized and hidden and leave. It's all back to purposeful living. Like people joke about my book. because it's called Give a Heck, How to Live Life on Purpose and Not by Accident. Well, to live a purposeful life takes effort. It takes, like you said, it takes practice. And it's not a one-off. There's no secret formula or elixir. Everybody's like their fingerprint unique. And I don't know how long when I coach people, how long it's going to take for them because I'm still working on myself, right? We can get to a point where maybe you're more elevated and you're happy and how you feel about things, how you interpret, how you communicate, interact. But you're going to have those moments where you get triggered. And then that's great. How old is this bit inside of me? How do I, because then you're finally accepting and trying to deal past it. And maybe that trigger won't happen as often. Can't say it won't ever happen
Yeah.
again, but
Yeah, because
I love that.
we sort of abandoned and neglected and left those bits alone. And so they feel really like, and they feel like they have to do all these things that it's not their job. It's my job as the soul to take care of this stuff, not theirs. And so it frees up that energy as well.
Yeah, I love that. So thank you. This is such a fabulous podcast. You've given me so many good things just to utilize on myself. I like I tell people, who's your number one? They'll say, who's your number one fan? Me. I'm my number one fan of my show because I get to selectively choose who I want to be on that I think is going to change the listeners' lives or give them a baby step or a step up in life. But it helps me too because I'm ever evolving and I want to change and I don't want to ever think that I know it all, that somebody doesn't know some little statement or a technique that I can utilize. And you've given me a few I've written down. So thank you. I
Oh,
appreciate
well,
that.
my pleasure.
Yeah. So when you talk about gratitude, how have you found gratitude and work-life balance are connected, like together? Like I understand myself how they are, but can you explain that better to the listeners, how having a grateful life and their work-life balance will work in tandem with one another?
Well, gratitude works with everything. Full stop. It's like a really big key to manifesting what you're choosing to manifest in your life. And the way I like to help people with it is that we make the mistake of waiting for something to be grateful for. Instead of already, like a good first step is to start with looking at all the blessings we have in our life and start really simple. Do I have a roof over my head? Do I have that safety and security that comes with it? Do I have a bed to sleep in? Do I have hot water to take a hot shower? Do I have food in my fridge, in my pantry? Do I have people that love me? All those basic fundamental things in life versus like, I don't know, having a wedding anniversary or finishing some goal or project. That's all great. But we don't have to wait for something to be grateful for. We have so much to be grateful for already in our lives. And if we just start with those basics and just look around us and, walk through our home or our apartment, wherever we're living, or if we're traveling in the room we're staying in, and just, wow, this is really cool. Thank you. It's not like we have to, that we're taught in our society to look outside of ourselves because there's always someone that has more. There's always someone that's better looking. There's always someone that has more money. There's always someone that looks like they have a better life. And that's a key to just dragging us down. It's not helpful.
Yeah, comparison lifestyle and wanting what the Jones or the Smiths, the neighbors, your sister, brother, all it does is cause, depression or anxiety. It can cause both. I love how you talk about the simplistic nature of what being grateful can be, right? Having gratitude. When I go to bed at night, people will laugh. I've even part of my exercise, I'll talk about what you're saying, running water, being able to brush my teeth, having a bed to lay in. I have gratefulness that I have a comfortable pillow to lie on, that I have sheets and blankets to keep warm, that I'm able to swing my legs out of the bed and be able to walk because some people can't. And I'll teach people that, and they'll just go, "Well, that's kind of corny." Well, no, it's not, because I appreciate the simplistic things in life that so many have taken for granted, and I took for granted growing up. I'm not saying I just all of a sudden had an epiphany and I was aware of this. It's something I've had to practice. I continually practice, and I know when my gratefulness is not as strong at night, I feel different through my sleep process. And even in the morning, before I get out of bed, I'm grateful. right? About
Yeah.
everything, running water, food in the fridge, good friends, everything you talked about. It just makes me smile because that's what I do. It's
And
who
and,
I've
and I
become.
yeah, I want to give you kudos for that because I feel it's really important not to be in like on social media like the half hour before bed. And what you're doing with this gratitude practice before bed is you're setting yourself up in the sleep state to process and be more grateful. Because if you go to bed and you're really upset about something, it's really important to feel through that and let it go and come to a different place. Otherwise, you're going to wake up feeling that way and even worse. And so to have that gratitude practice um, like bubbling away in a sleep state is just really fantastic. It's really, really
Oh,
healthy. It's really helpful.
100%. And those listening, I'm not perfect at it. I've had days where, especially this summer, had some really challenging health things happen with one of my daughters who just about didn't make it. And
Wow.
I literally struggled at night. Didn't matter what I said in my gratefulness, it was in my mindset. It was driven in there so hard. So I'm not saying this is perfect, but it works more times than not, right? For
Right.
me, right? There is
Yeah.
circumstances where it hasn't. I'm just being
Hmm.
honest and vulnerable with the listeners because, we can say that this all works, which it does, but for myself, it's not 100%.
No, none of us are here perfect. We're giving the wisdom that we can, and we hope it works for you. But I make no claims to perfection either. That is, there's no such thing if you're in a body on this planet. Otherwise we wouldn't be here to be learning and evolving and growing.
Absolutely. So I appreciate you also sharing, the simplicity of what gratitude can be. And obviously, it can evolve outside of just being grateful for running water. And like you said, there you can be grateful of these special moments that have happened. Maybe you finished a project, maybe you had somebody that give you a great compliment about who you are or what you've done for them or their organization, if it's a business thing. But those aren't enough. Those are fleeting. But being grateful for the simplistic things, that's forever, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Right. So I speak of the hamster wheel of life and how people can seem to escape it. I know I was reading you talk about the hamster wheel as well. Why do you believe everyone needs to find a way off the hamster wheel and begin to live with intention and purpose?
Well, for me, I mean, the hamster wheel is maybe a metaphor or visualization of what we
Yeah,
do. It's like if we're running on the hamster wheel, we're going really, really fast, we're working really, really hard, and we're going around in a big circle, we're going nowhere. And what keeps us stuck is like our beliefs, our judgments, the patterns and programs that are in place that keep us small. And so if we start working with ways to let them go, becoming aware of them, then we're going to have the wherewithal to, with that awareness, to take steps in a new direction that's more positive, that's more supportive, that's more loving of ourselves. So first we have to become aware that we're running on this hamster wheel, and then we have to have the desire to sort of step off and take a look at ourselves. And that can be a little bit confronting because we're taught that it's not okay to have these things inside of ourselves, but the more we face these things, these patterns and programs, it could be like the way I talk to myself, you stupid idiot, why did you do that? Or whatever we do. And the more, or maybe some bigger things where someone can see a mistake that we made and we're embarrassed or whatever, the more we face those things, the less power they have over us. And the more we can let them go and replace them with like sacred qualities like compassion, calm assurance, self determination. Because as we let fear go out of our bodies, as we release it, it's important to replace it with sacred qualities. So there's not a vacancy there with more, I call it like more lighter level, or it's just, I don't know, any sacred quality you like: tenacity, self determination, the willingness to endure, compassion, joy, courage, whatever works for you. But yeah, it's really important to have that courage to go on that journey and to know that there's nothing wrong with you and that you're going to be a completely different person on the other side.
yeah, I agree. That's a great way to put it. But yeah, it's a visualization for me too. I talk about it in my book about the hamster wheel, and I talk about it quite often because it is a visualization for people, and people chuckle about it, but it's true. in order to get unstuck from that hamster wheel of life, we have to do different things. And you talk about tenacity. I myself think being tenacious is a superpower. It is something that if a person can be tenacious and not give up on wanting to develop and change, obviously tenacity can be bad too, but I use it obviously in a good way where I want to be tenacious about the development of myself. I'm going to listen to this book for X amount of period of time. I'm going to do these processes that I'm utilizing to continually move forward. And I'm refuse to give up because I don't want to climb back on that hamster wheel of life. And again, circumstances in life, like what happened with my daughter this summer, I was on the hamster wheel. I'll be honest with the people listening. I was stuck. I was utilizing everything I could just to get through my days and not be a puddle on the ground of worry, right?
Yeah,
So
right.
sometimes things are so overpowering for myself. I'm not saying that about it. I would never want to say this is about everybody, but for me, um, but when the light shone through and her health was getting better, I was continuing to do what I was doing helped me recover quicker and get back off that
Yeah.
hamster wheel on a direction and focus of a more positive life and a purposeful one.
And I just want to share one other thing for your listeners is
Sure.
that we're told that lots of times that, if it's not easy, then we're doing something wrong. And that's total horse manure. I always visualize it. I went to Alaska many years ago, and it's when the salmon were swimming upstream up the river to
Yeah.
mate. And that's what we're doing. We're swimming upstream against the river to ground and actualize these kind of sacred qualities and to be different than most people. And so it takes a lot of self-determination and a lot of work. And you're not doing anything wrong if it's not happening right away. Because every teeny tiny little small steps forward is something to be acknowledged, something to be celebrated, and that is progress. And even if we take a couple of steps backward, if we can look and see what we did that wasn't working and how we could do it differently next time, that's also a big victory. That's also progress.
Oh, absolutely. Um, Thank you for this great conversation. This has been awesome. I really enjoyed myself. So, Arlene, if you had to give our listeners one last closing message, what would you tell them in regards to giving a heck and never giving up?
Well, I would say that any disaster can become a blessing. Any blessing can become a disaster, but there's always a better way. So whatever curveball life throws you, you can turn it into a blessing. And don't be one of these people that turns a blessing into a disaster. Be really, really grateful for it. Bring that gratitude in your life. And it's always a better way means that we're always evolving, we're always growing. And so be kind to yourself, be patient, be tolerant with yourself because what was really great and a high level of achievement today, like 5 years from now, it's going to be something different.
I love that. I I don't know if you've ever had this. People ask you, what would you tell your younger self? I tell my younger self if I had the opportunity to two different things. One, be a great listener, be a better listener, and be kind, right, to yourself, and it'll help you be kind to others, right? It's
Right.
just simple lessons that we don't really understand when we're 18 or 19-year-old self, when we think we're bulletproof and we're going to attack and beat the world and the world's not going to beat us. And I love that. Disaster can be a blessing. That is so true. That is a great final moment. So our time is almost up, and I want to respect our listeners and your time. However, before we end, what's the best way that the people can reach you?
Well, you can always text me because even from out of the country, my international texting works, and that's 720-936-2634. You can find me at my website, jewelconsultancy.com. That's JEWL, like the diamond. And you can also find me on LinkedIn under Arlene Cohen Miller.
Awesome. For those new to the show, you can head over to giveaheck.com, go to the top, hit podcast. You'll see a picture of Arlene, and I will have what she just discussed in the show notes, her social media links, her website, and I will ensure that the phone number is in so that you can text and also find out about the meetup as well. And yeah, we'll make sure that the listeners know. I so appreciate your time. Is there any last words you'd like to add before I close up the show?
Thank you for having me here, and I hope it was helpful to all of you audience and listeners out there. And I am available if you have any questions.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for being on Give a Heck, Arlene. I appreciate your time and sharing some of your experiences so that others too can learn it is never too late to give a heck.
Thank you for taking time out of your day and listening to Give a Heck. If you find value, I'd appreciate you sharing with your friends and family so they too can learn how to live life on purpose, not by accident. So you do not miss the next episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and please also post a review. I look forward to reading your comments. This has been Dwight Heck. If you want to check out other podcast episodes or today's show notes, please check out my website, giveaheck.com. And until next time, together let us all strive to give a heck.